Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Moon. Blurb. When fate spins a web of twisted desire, Raven's world is torn apart by the revelation that her soul mates are not one but two. Once like brothers, the men now face a devastating rift as they discover their shared destiny with Raven, a revelation that fractures their bond and sends them on separate paths. 3 years of distance and unresolved tension follow, but an impending threat forces them to reunite. The Moon Goddess will demands they set aside their fractured past and join forces to protect their pack from a lurking menace. As secrets unravel and trust is shattered, Raven finds herself caught in a storm of conflicting loyalties. With the mate bond driving each of them to the brink, time is running out. Will Raven be able to navigate the chaos of her entangled fate and bring her mates back together before it's too late? Or will the swirling forces of love and duty force her to choose between the two men who are both her destiny and her greatest challenge? Episode 1. Chapter 1-10. 2 years ago. Liam. Another blood moon, another mating ball, another god reminder that I had a mate, yet she wasn't mine. How do you come to terms with that? Dad was adamant that I come to this mating ball as we were off from the alpha training regime for a week. No one really knew that I had found my mate already and I intended to keep it that way. What kind of alpha has to share his mate? What alpha would accept that? I couldn't. That night was still raw in my mind. I won't ever forget that both Damon and I wished each other luck before stepping into the hall, hoping that we would find our mate. The blood moon occurred twice a year and it was only on this night where one could find their mate if they were at age. I still remember walking in, seeking out the woman I had loved for years. Praying that she was my mate, and she was. My heart raced when I had laid eyes on her, in that black dress, only for my best friend to also claim her as his mate. We had both said in unison, I couldn't handle it, so I had turned and left. I sucked in a sharp breath, glaring at the glittering lights, unable to ignore the smell of expensive fragrances, wine and food hung in the air, and sweat. It all made me sick. I didn't want to be here, I wasn't meant to be here. It just brought back the painful memories of that night. I downed my 20th odd glass of vodka. It wasn't enough, I needed something stronger. I had shown my face, I wasn't going to stick around any longer. I pushed through the crowds, not caring for anyone here. Right now I felt like I was in a place I didn't belong. I grabbed a glass of wine from a passing waiter, feeling detached. The flashbacks of that night and the familiar pain in my chest returned with renewed vengeance. I hated the entire situation. Overnight, I lost the woman I loved and my best friend. Wallowing in self-pity wasn't going to change though. It was what it was, I made this decision. I felt relieved when I stepped out into the bitter cold. It was raining, and the moon was hidden behind a layer of thick clouds. Sounds of snickering and swearing made me glance up to see a group of young werewolves gathered in the corner popping some pills. They tensed when they saw me, I knew they knew who I was. Hey Alpha, one of them muttered, shoving something into his back pocket. I walked over, grabbing 2 of the bottles of alcohol from their stash. Give me a couple, I said. They looked surprised at that. You sure? You will get super, he trailed off the moment my eyes flashed a dark magnetic blue and he quickly took the packet out of his pocket. I could sense their fear and nervousness, but right now I didn't care what they were up to, I just needed a break from my own head. 1 or 2? The teen asked. Make it 3. They exchanged looks, and I held my glass out. He dropped 3 in, I turned and walked off, watching the pills fizz in my glass. Taking a deep breath, I knocked it down in one go, enjoying the exhilarating rush that traveled through me as I tossed my glass to the ground. The sound of it shattering was pleasant in my ears. I bit the cap off one of the cheap bottles of beer and downed it, not caring that half of it splashed all over me. Memories of long ago seeped into my mind like a poison spreading through every vein in my body, unable to shut them out. Mates. You're my mate. Liam. Please man, don't do this. Don't hurt her, give her a chance. Liam, the moon goddess paired you three for a reason. Don't tell me what I should or shouldn't do. Liam, please. My eyes blazed and I threw the bottles to the ground. Shards of glass hit my face, but it didn't bother me. My chest was heaving with anger. Unable to ignore the voices in my head, I frowned, walking without any aim towards the woods, the voices only getting louder in my mind. No, it wasn't my fault, I gave her a chance. That night, after talking to Kia, I thought I'd give it one shot. One shot to talk to her. Because in the end, I'd loved her since I first started noticing the opposite S**X. But I couldn't get through the mind link. I thought she might have fallen asleep, so I left her 3 messages. I confessed my love for her. She was all I wanted. Was it that much to ask for? Those 3 messages had been read, but she didn't bother replying, so what was the point? Clearly, I wasn't enough. My vision swayed as the drugs took effect. It felt good. The pain in my chest had eased and I felt like I was floating. Wouldn't it be ideal to stay like this forever? Was that the sound of water? I kept walking, the floor becoming uneven, the rain began pouring down faster and my tux was fully drenched. I took my jacket off, staring up at the sky as rain poured down on me. Where was my reprieve? That was when I saw her, sitting against a tree staring up at the moon that was masked. My heart beat like 1,000 drums, my head ringing, and the distant vague thought of whether this was real or not crept into my mind. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she gulped down some beer. Her black and pink bob looked longer, and she looked even smaller than I remembered, her hand shaking as she tossed the empty bottle aside and grabbed another. Raven! Was this real? Was she really here? That didn't make sense. This pack was at least a 30-minute run from the Dark River pack, wasn't it? It's a dream. A perfect hallucination. I stepped closer, her delicious scent hit my nose, only adding to the high that I felt. She suddenly froze, staring up at me, looking shocked before she clambered to her feet. Raven! I whispered. Was it really her, or had I imagined her up? She looked even more beautiful than I remembered. There was something in those unique colored eyes of hers. Something that called me to her. I closed the gap between us. Was that her heart thudding wildly? She opened her mouth to speak, and I felt the fear knot in the pit of my stomach. Don't reject me, don't do it. A nightmare that I woke up to so often. I reached over, placing a finger on her lips, shaking my head, my vision blurring. I don't care if this was a dream or if I was mistaking someone else for her. I needed it, needed her. She tugged my hand away. With you. Okay. What was she saying? I wasn't sure. All I could focus on were those wet, plump lips of hers that moved silently. This was a dream that wasn't going to happen in reality. I brushed her soaking hair off her forehead, cupping her face. You're beautiful. I whispered. Before she could even reply, I leant down, pressing my lips to hers in a passionate kiss that sent sparks rushing through me. The sweet taste of her mouth mixed with alcohol was perfect. Goddess, she tasted perfect. Yeah, those pills worked. This felt good. A soft whimper escaped her as I relished in the pleasure that wrapped around me like a blanket. This felt so good. The moment she began to kiss me back, her intoxicating scent enveloping me, all control I had was gone. I wrapped my arms around her tightly, kissing her like there was no tomorrow, and maybe there wasn't. Whatever this was, would be gone. A soft tantalizing moan left her lips and I groaned. She tasted so good. Everything darkened for a moment and I staggered but held on to her tightly, pinning her against the nearest tree. She gasped when her back hit the bark and I took the chance to plunge my tongue into her mouth, but that just caused her to free herself and move her head away. My stomach knotted and I realized this was it, she was denying me once more. Her heart was pounding but I forced myself to look into her face. Was that rain or tears? I ran my hand over her body, when she tensed, suddenly grabbing hold of my hand and moving them off of her. The pain of rejection stung. My mate did not want me. You're not yourself. Listen to me, she whispered, cupping my face. Sympathy and sadness shone in her eyes, and I frowned. I didn't need sympathy. I hated pity. It's not Raven. There's no way she could even be here. It's just the effect of the pills. I jerked away from her, stumbling slightly. She moved towards me, but I raised my hand. Don't come near me, I don't need you. I hissed. It hurt so much. I turned away, ready to walk when she grabbed hold of my shirt from behind. My eyes flashed and I pulled free. I said, leave me alone. I growled, shoving her off roughly. I heard a thud making me pause, turning back to her. In my dark haze, I looked at the woman I had knocked to the ground. Yet, my mind was playing tricks on me. She couldn't be Raven, no matter how much I thought it was. I turned away, forcing myself to shift before breaking into an unsteady run and vanishing into darkness. Chapter 2 Current day Raven. The sun beat down on my skin, a thin layer of sweat coating it. I jumped back as the two men attacked simultaneously. 3. I twisted around, elbowing one of them in the neck, hearing a satisfying crunch. 2. I flipped backwards, grabbing onto the other one, and slammed him face forward into the ground. 1. With a final spin, I slammed my fist into the first man's nose. He grunted as he staggered backwards, before falling to his knees. I smiled slightly, breathing hard, as I stepped back. And that is how you do it, I said, looking at the group of teens who had been watching. They didn't say anything, just stared in awe at the two giants who were flat on the floor. That's amazing, one of the boys muttered. I crouched down and took off the weights I had tied around my ankles. I heard a clap and turned to see my Aunt Angela walking over. Her long hair was in a high ponytail, and she was dressed in jeans and an oversized top. Once again, impressively done, Raven, she said, passing me a water bottle. Thanks. I think everyone is getting too predictable, I said, standing up and taking it. Or you're just incredible. You got an email from Elijah, she said quietly. My heart skipped a beat, and my nerves began to brew in my stomach. Really? Yes, he has officially asked for you to come home and take the position as head warrior. Return home. My stomach twisting as the memory of that night returned to me. That night Moon Goddess led me to my mate but made me lose everything. Flashback, I walked hand in hand with my friend Kiera. My nerves were kicking in big time. The mating ball was being held out in the open, lit up brightly with dazzling lights. My eyes were looking for two familiar faces. Our other two friends, Liam and Damon. Would one of them be my mate? When I started searching for them, the most delicious mix of scents hit me, and I froze. My chest pounded as I inhaled deeply. Roasted walnuts, fresh rain, spiced cinnamon, and honey. Scents that drowned me. Scents that were faintly familiar. "Oh hey, boys," Kiara said with a smile. I turned slowly, my mouth still full of chocolate that I had been eating, as I stared at the duo before me. My heart was thumping wildly. Liam looked mesmerizing in a grey suit, and Damon looked as hot in black. If I thought they were handsome before, goddess, they were complete invites now. Both of their eyes were glowing, fixed on me with a possessive look that made my core knot and my wolf howl in happiness. "Mate," they both said in unison. "Mates. My mates. I have two mates, goddess," the boys' gazes snapped to each other. I couldn't speak as I gauged their reaction. Damon looked stunned, and Liam's reaction pulled at my chest. Accusatory, hurt and disappointment. He stepped back, running a hand through his locks, which had been styled in a coif moments earlier. "How can she be both of our mate?" he asked in his husky voice. "It happens." Damon's deeper voice came. My heart was pounding as I looked at Liam. No, he would not reject me, would he? He shook his head, stepping back. "I can't do this." His words cut me like a knife, and I felt the pain of his indirect rejection destroy me. He turned and walked off, not even giving me a chance to say anything. "Liam!" Damon called after him. He looked at me for a second, his blue eyes softening before he ran after his friend. No matter what I said or thought, the pain of Liam's rejection stung worse than being doused in wolf's bane. I realized at that moment, I wouldn't be happy with one. I needed them both. They were both a part of me. End of flashback, Raven. I snapped out of my thoughts as the wind blew through my deep purple and blue ombre hair as I stared at my aunt. Sorry I spaced out. I gave her a wry smile and turned to the kids. Lessons out for today? Yes ma'am. They hurried off chattering amongst themselves, discussing the match or certain moves, and I smiled at the two men who were picking themselves up. Both Aunt and I fell in step as we walked towards the pack house. Despite being an outsider, I had been welcomed here with open arms. For the last 3 years, this had been my home. Are you going to tell your parents about the position? No, I'll tell them when I return if Uncle L hasn't already done that, I said, drinking the water. Aunt Angela nodded and I knew her strained relationship with Dad only got worse with each passing year. They barely talked and when they did, they clashed. In the beginning, Aunt and her mate, Cassandra, had moved to the Blood Moon Pack, but when Cassandra's mom became ill, they moved back to the Dark River Pack and decided to stay on. I know Dad was the reason for that, but I never really asked what the final push had been, because I too had my secrets and I didn't want anyone prying in my life either. You earned this, Raven. I have watched you train endlessly, push yourself further and harder. If anyone does, you are the one who deserves this. I am proud of you. So, when you go back, I want you to keep your chin up and face them all. Our eyes met and I wondered how much she knew or assumed, but I simply gave her a faint smile. I will do exactly that because I wasn't weak. 2 days later I had arrived home. Dressed in a pair of black jeans, a purple halter top, a leather jacket and boots, I stared up at the huge wall that surrounded the pack grounds. When did they build this? I approached the gate, driving slowly, lowering my car window, and the guard looked me over. A small smile crossed his lips, and I gave him a bright one in return. Raven Jacobs. The one and only. I said, flicking my hair dramatically. Girl. I never knew you were coming. We were only expecting the new head warrior. It's you. I guess so. I won't keep you waiting then, the alphas are waiting. Nice seeing you again. I drove through, trying to keep a cap on my emotions. I wasn't ready for this. Goddess, I don't think I'd ever been ready for this, but I had to do it. I parked up outside the pack house, and to my relief, it was only Uncle L and Auntie Red. Raven. Welcome home. Auntie Red said, coming over the moment I got out of the car and hugged me tightly. I hugged her back, inhaling her familiar comforting scent. Thanks, Auntie Red. I said, before Uncle L gave me a tight hug. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. He had lost the last of his closest friends 2 months ago, and I knew it must be affecting him greatly. I looked up at him, my heart skipping a beat as I looked into those cerulean blue eyes, eyes that reminded me of Liam's. I haven't actually told the boys you're back. Uncle L said, smirking. Think they'll be happy? I'm sure. I said, faking a smile, very aware of Auntie Red watching me keenly. But I think I'll see them tomorrow. I need to go home first. Ah yes, I did tell Haru and Kimberly you were back. Auntie Red said. Great. It was later that night, and I was back home. I didn't unpack because I wanted to ask Alpha L if I could allocate in the pack house. And boy, I think I was making the right decision to do so. The tension was suffocating. I stirred my food on the plate, not even wanting to eat the dishes my mom had cooked with this tension. So Alpha Elijah told me you applied for the head warrior position. Dad remarked, his jaw clenched, his sharp brown eyes looking at me calculatingly. Yeah, I did. I said blandly. You didn't once consider to, I don't know, ask my opinion. Why would I? I raised my eyebrows. Was he seriously going to still do this? Raven, don't speak to your dad like that. Mom said quietly. I pursed my lips, taking a deep breath to calm myself down. Too much time spent around Angela, it was bound to happen. Dad added, drinking some of his fresh orange juice. Oh, for real? Dad, how can you blame Auntie for this? Like for real, she has nothing to do with my decision. That attitude is a mirror of hers. Dad hissed. I'm not even arguing. I exclaimed, trying to keep my voice calm. I'm just saying you can't blame Auntie for my decision or anything. This is all me. Well, it doesn't really look good. So, you chose a position where you are going to prance around amongst men, befitting. That stung. Dad. It's training, I am not going to go put on a strip show for them, and even if I did want to become a stripper, you really shouldn't be putting me down like that. Wow, see that, Kim? Your daughter wants to be a hooker or stripper or whatever. Dad. I shook my head, I can't believe he was so backwards. I stood up, placing my knife and fork down slowly, not wanting him to lash out at me for being loud. I worked to become something, to be accepted to such a position. Dad, it's no small feat. Head warrior means I am one of the strongest fighters of this pack. I worked day and night to prove that I'm good at something. Aren't you at least a little proud of me? I asked, glancing at Mom only for her to look away. That hurt. Even when my mates abandoned me, I wished that I at least had my mom's arms to cry in, but I didn't. Proud? What's there to be proud of? You're just another Angela, another disappointment. He stood up, slamming his fork onto the table, and stormed out of the room. Haru, Mom said, rushing from the room. I stared at the table, swallowing hard. A disappointment. A failure. Unwanted. Useless. I took a deep breath, smiling faintly. It was okay, I was used to it all. Chapter 3. Raven. The following day, I went for a run before showering and getting ready in black flared pants, a black high-neck top, and applying my signature dramatic eyeliner with some mauve lipstick. Opening my window, I climbed out, not wanting another run-in with my parents. Making my way to the pack house with the memory drive of some training regime and ideas I headed towards the Alpha's office. I slowed down when a familiar scent hit my nose. Roasted walnuts and honey. A scent that enveloped my entire body and made every nerve stand on edge. Goddess, please don't be around. With each step closer to the office, my heart was fluttering with nerves. The last memory I had of Liam tugged painfully at my chest, and it was pretty difficult to breathe. Raising my hand, I knocked on the door lightly before I opened it and stepped inside, stopping dead in my tracks when my gaze fell on the man in the leather chair. His legs crossed at the ankles as they stretched out in front of him, his elbow resting on the armrest. He was flicking through a file, when his eyes snapped upwards, piercing into mine. He was so much more handsome than I remembered him. He was dressed in a fitted black tee, that did nothing to hide his bulging arms. Goddess, he was even bigger than before. A tattoo covered his upper left arm, peeking out from his sleeve. His hair was styled, with a short back and sides, and a scar went down his right eye. How did he get hurt? But the thing that was most different about him was the coldness in those cerulean eyes. Gone was the warmth that one would have associated with Liam years ago. He cast one glance over me, sending another gutting stab of pain through me. Unwanted, but I didn't care. I would live for me, mates or not. When it was clear he wasn't going to speak, I stepped up to the desk. I'm sorry, I thought Alpha L would be here, I have some training regimes I put together. I said as his eyes were back on his file. Why were you looking for him? As your Alpha, shouldn't you be running it past me? He asked coldly. My Alpha? He cocked a brow, leaning back. Don't tell me you took this position without even knowing who the Alpha is. Nice. His sarcasm irked me, but I said nothing. No one had told me. Surely Kia and Aunt Angela knew. Sorry, I guess I'm a bit behind on the latest news. Congratulations on becoming Alpha, I will pray that you can be half the Alpha your dad was. I said, trying to hide the sarcasm in my voice, displaying a fake smile. His eyes flashed a deep magnetic blue, and I felt his anger rising. You will remember who you're talking to, he said icily. Besides, I don't have time for some stupid training plans. Discuss them with the beta. My heart skipped a beat at the resentment in his voice when he said beta. Okay. Sorry for wasting your precious time, Alpha Liam. I didn't care that my voice sounded bitter. I didn't wait for a reply, turning and leaving the office before he could even reply, slamming the door shut behind me. I stormed down the hall, feeling my irritation growing. Great, now I had to face Damon. Although he hadn't been as bad as Liam, he didn't really make an effort with me either. On my birthday and on Christmas he would send a message, and when I got injured pretty bad last year, he had sent a small message, but that was it. That night, not only had I lost my mates before I even got them, I lost two of my best friends. I wish I didn't go to the ball. If I didn't, nothing would have changed between us. I was so lost in thought that I didn't realize where I was going when the sound of a woman's breathless giggle made me stop in my tracks. I looked ahead to see a gorgeous woman. I vaguely recognized her. She was leaning against the wall, her hand on a man's chest as he leaned over her slightly, speaking quietly. A man whose scent of spiced cinnamon and fresh rain hit me like a storm, and with it, the gutting feeling of pain twisted in my stomach. His head snapped towards me, and I stared into the deep powdery blue eyes of Damon. He quickly moved away from the woman, and that stung. Why would you do that unless your intentions weren't innocent? Raven. I didn't know you were back, he said quietly, his voice sending a rush of tingles through me. Yeah, I came last night. Liam told me to discuss the training regime with you. Take a look at them when you have time and see what you think. I said, walking over to him. I held out the memory stick. He looked down at me, and I saw the concern in his eyes. His heart was racing a little as he took it. I let go quickly, not wanting to touch him. Despite it all, I felt a sliver of guilt go through me for what happened 2 years ago. I looked away, giving the woman a small smile. She really was gorgeous. Hey! She said. Hi! Robin! She said, holding her hand out. Raven! I took her hand, and she gave Damon a smile. Nice to meet you, girl. You too. I turned and walked off, not wanting to spend another minute here. With each step I took, my smile faded away. Crap, I was meant to talk to Liam about the pack house. I didn't want to ask him again. Maybe I'll go visit Azura and ask Auntie Red. That sounded like a better plan. I quickly left the pack house, feeling a lot better as I hurried through the woods towards the house that stood a little away from the rest of the pack. A home where I spent most of my childhood memories. An escape from the tension and gloom of my own house. My heart skipped a beat as I looked around, remembering how I would sit with Kiera under that tree near the river, remembering Liam and calling me. Damon's smile when he got everyone some fresh donuts or something. Don't think about them. The saddest thing was, with time, my wolf became disconnected from me too. I rang the doorbell, and I heard the sound of laughing. Mama! Someone door! I smiled, hearing Azura's voice. I shouldn't have come empty-handed. I even got her a gift from up north. Goddess, my memory was ridiculous. Raven, come on in. Auntie Red said the moment she opened the door. Don't mind if I do. I replied, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. Azura. She moved away, looking at me wearily. I'm Raven. Waven. She said. I smiled and nodded. Want me to give you a piggyback ride? Or I can be a horsey. Oh. I smiled, at a girl. I picked her up, spinning her around, making her giggle. She looked a lot like Indigo, and I wondered how Auntie Red coped with that. I kissed her forehead gently before I placed her down on the worktop. Auntie Red seemed to have been busy cooking. Did you end up seeing the boys? She asked. My heart skipped a beat, and I swear she knew something. Yes, I did. I said smoothly. Pulling faces at Azura, who burst out laughing. That's great. You'll stay for lunch, I'm making shepherd's pie. I don't mind, I hadn't eaten and I couldn't cook. I came because I wanted to ask for something. I said, perching on one of the bar stools. Sure, what is it? I wanted to ask if I could put in a request for a room at the pack house. I said, hiding the nervousness I felt inside. She frowned, looking at me concerned. Angela told me you would probably ask for that. Is everything okay? Yeah, I just think I'm old enough to have my own place. I said, shrugging lightly. Chapter 4. Raven. Her question took me by surprise, but I simply shrugged. I haven't been around for ages, Auntie. She smirked. You girls do know, you and Kia. She stated. But if you don't want to tell me right now, that's fine, but nothing stays hidden. Besides, I have my assumptions. Trust Auntie Red to say that. She wasn't dumb, I had to give her that. I really didn't want to ask her what she assumed because I might give something away. Ah well, I hope you do get to figure it out. Auntie, if you ever need this little gummy bear babysat, I will do it willingly. She is so adorable. I smiled at Azura, who was playing with my hair, and I won't deny I liked it. She was so cute. Oh, I'll definitely hold you to that. Anta said, smiling. Good, I replied, thinking this place felt so much better to spend time at. Night had fallen and I was in my room. My stuff hadn't really been touched since I had gone and I was doing a clear out. I will bin what I don't want, and what I do, I'll pack it up. I needed to tell Mom and Dad about me moving too. But the moody look on Dad's face had put me off. I didn't want more drama. I put on some Disney classic songs, singing along to Colors of the Wind as I began on my wardrobe. Some of this stuff was way too childish. My phone rang and I hurried over to it, smiling when I saw Kia's name pop up on the incoming video call. Kiki, I said, answering it, and my babies. Kiara laughed as she sat there feeding one of them. Goddess, those two were gorgeous. They were about 3 months now and were like two little dolls. I thought I'd video call whilst I'm feeding. How are you? She asked. I plopped onto my bed and smiled. I'm great, I am going to start training from tomorrow. I saw Liam and Damon, both are doing great, and I asked your mom about moving to the pack house. I ended with a whisper. She smiled gently, but from the knowing look in her eyes, I knew she saw past my facade. Over the years, Kiara had become so much more observant. She didn't fall for my fake smiles. You are brave, she said softly. You got this. Thanks, hun. I whispered. I'm going to try to visit in a few weeks' time. She said. Really? I can't wait to meet these two munchkins. I had only seen them when I visited her pack with Aunt Angela. I'm sure they want to see their auntie too. Kiara replied with a small laugh. We sat there, chatting and talking like we did often enough. Although Kiara had an entire pack to run, and as queen it was more than just a pack, we still found time to talk to each other and it felt good. After a good half hour, we said goodbye and I returned to clearing out my wardrobe. I had just finished when a panicked voice came through the link. Someone's been killed down by the west side of the river. The man sounded fearful, and my own heart was thudding at his words. An influx of voices came through the link as I rushed to my window. Opening it, I jumped out, not even realizing I was barefoot until the stones beneath my window poked into my feet, but I was too worried to care as I rushed down towards the river. It's covered, no one panic and stay in your homes. Liam's cold voice came through the link, sending a rush of warmth through me. I missed the mind link with them. I ignored his command as I approached the spot, slowing down to see several men standing around looking at something on the ground. My heart thumped as I stepped closer. Damon was there, and when I approached, he looked up, not missing the way he looked me over. It was then I realized I was only in my leggings and a crop top. My heart thudded, but I tried not to focus on him as I stepped closer. Don't come closer, Raven. His deep seductive voice made me stop. It's not pleasant. I can handle a lot more than you think, I said, quietly stepping forward. But maybe not. The face of the body had been cut from ear to ear and the eyes had been removed. My stomach churned and I clamped a hand over my mouth, feeling sick. The teeth have all been taken too. The Delta, Zack said quietly. I knew him as he was only slightly younger than I was. What happened? Liam's voice came from behind us. I turned to see him shirtless and clearly, he had been in the. He glanced at me, his frown deepening when he looked at Damon before he brushed past us both. Sparks flew through me at his touch and my breath hitched. Scour the area. Did anyone witness anything? Who found the body? He asked, his alpha aura whirling around him. Ralph, his brother. Zack said, motioning to the side with a jerk of his head. I turned to see a boy around 12 or 13 sitting under a tree, shaking, and rocking himself. An Omega child. Why was no one comforting him? I hurried over to him and sat down next to him, wrapping my arms around him. Hey, it's okay, I got you. I whispered, seeing his hands tangled tightly into his hair. It's not true. It's not true. He muttered repeatedly. Liam approached, looking down at him. When did you find him? He asked. The boy continued to mutter, not even hearing Liam, who frowned. Can't you see it has affected him greatly and you're asking questions? I asked icily. His gaze snapped to me, and his eyes flashed. And didn't I say to everyone to stay inside? He growled. But that doesn't mean I would listen. I looked away from him, feeling two pairs of eyes on me, but they could look and get as mad as they wanted, because right now I was more concerned about this kid who had seen his brother in that horrifying state. I knew his face would haunt my dreams too. Scour the area, track any scent that lingers here, and I want anyone whose scent is here to be brought in for questioning. Maybe they saw something. This doesn't look like a normal killing. What was the cause of death? No idea. Maybe poison. Request an autopsy. Liam muttered. There's no strange scent from him. Wait, what is that? Damon said, suddenly making me look up sharply as he bent down and took a piece of paper from the man's hand. The group of men fell silent, and I looked at them curiously. What does it say? I asked. No one spoke, and I frowned. Tell me. Damon turned, his eyes meeting mine, and he frowned, holding it up. Who's next? Chapter 5. Raven. Last night, the image of the Omega Ryan kept replaying in my mind. I couldn't sleep or anything. The way his mouth had been cut open, his teeth ripped out and no lingering scent. It was creepy. I shuddered, unable to remove that image from my head as I got dressed for training in a sports bra, leggings, and an oversized hoodie before grabbing my portable music player and jumping out the window. This had always been my way out, and although my parents hated it, if Dad wasn't so controlling I wouldn't have to. Okay, maybe I still would. I walked to the training fields and to my dismay, Damon was standing there, dressed in baggy bottoms, a black vest and sneakers. He was leaning against the wall looking at the throng of people who were training. My heart skipped a beat as I looked him over. He really had gotten even more handsome over the years, if that was even possible. He had lost the boyish looks he once supported, his face was now more angled and rugged. His eyes snapped towards me, and my heart skipped a beat when I thought I saw them flash pale green as he looked me over. He gave me a small smile and pushed himself away from the wall. Hey! He said, looking down at me. Hi! Are you here for the training session? I asked, taking out the bandages for my hands and beginning to wrap them up. I didn't want to just stare into those eyes of his. Partially. We didn't get to talk properly yesterday. Congratulations on the new rank. I glanced up at him. Had he been thrown off by seeing me yesterday? I wasn't sure if it was that or that I saw him step away from Robin a little too quickly. Thanks. I checked out the training plans. I liked them a lot. Especially the wolf versus human sparring. That's something we haven't actually done, and your points were pretty neat. I nodded and began doing my stretches. We hadn't spoken much in 3 years, so why should that change now? Welcome home, Raven. His voice was soft, and I didn't miss the sadness in it. I looked up at him sharply. My own chest felt painfully tight. As much as I felt his sadness was genuine, we both knew his duty to his alpha and the bond he had with Liam clearly outdid what we had. That did hurt, but I couldn't blame him. Was that why the moon goddess gave me 2 mates? In hopes that perhaps one might just accept me? Or her having sympathy for someone like me? All I had wanted was someone who would love and cherish me. Thanks. I said, giving him one of my fake smiles. He smiled back and I turned towards the group. They were all young adults, and I knew they were all full-fledged warriors. All right everyone, those butts should be warmed up and you all should be standing to attention. I called loudly, my eyes scheming them all, taking note of those who were already standing, those who were clambering to their feet, and those who were distracted. I would target them at their weakest point and see who did best. As you all know, I'm Raven, the annoying girl who was a little too loud. If you have forgotten me, then I'm Raven Jacobs, the new head warrior. Which means it's my job to make sure you are all at your best. The Blood Moon Pack is one of the strongest packs in the country, and with it, we are always in everyone's line of sight. Things may have calmed down since the battle that occurred 3 years ago, but there is always the chance of danger. So, we need to be in the best shape possible. Last night came back to me, and I frowned, wondering how anyone had gotten into the pack grounds in the first place. We've never had a female lead warrior, like ever. Some guy murmured, and a few nodded. Hey, she's Damon began, but I raised my hand. I got this. I raised an eyebrow. I don't think my capabilities should be defined by whether I have APS or not. If anyone has doubts about my capabilities, you are welcome to come and face me one-on-one. I said clearly. Make sure you treat her with respect. Damon added, a warning clear in his voice. I looked at him, my eyes flashing. Thank you, Beta Damon, but I do not need anyone to defend me. Guilt flashed in those eyes before he nodded. I will leave you to it. He said quietly. I moved away, turning some music on my portable player and letting the upbeat music travel around the area. I was serious about training, but that did not mean we couldn't have a little fun. Okay, I want everyone paired with the person behind them. I snapped my hands. I could feel his eyes on me, but I ignored him. I needed to focus on my job. Name? I asked, pointing to a young man who was loitering along the side. Owen. He replied, sounding bored. Pair up with Taylor, isn't it? I said, looking at a well-built man who stood to the side. He smirked and nodded. Surprised you remembered my name, babe. I smiled at him. Oh, I remembered Taylor, he used to live right next door to us. You were an annoying neighbor. I said. He grinned. I am not pairing up with the loser. Owen spat, making both of us look at him. Hey! That was an order, and I won't tolerate you calling your teammates names. I snapped, walking over to the 6-foot-old guy. I don't know what issue the two had, but I was not going to tolerate it in my sessions. You may be the head warrior, but you don't have control over what leaves my mouth. Owen said, smirking cockily. Well, Owen, I'm the boss here, and unless you want me to put on Disney songs for the rest of the session, I would listen, because I swear, everyone will want to kill you after listening to Let It Go on repeat for the next hour or so. It would make this training what it is, a joke. He muttered. Want to spar against me, Owen? Maybe I'll show you I am not here to play. I said coldly, my eyes flashing. He clenched his jaw, but it was clear he wasn't stupid enough to challenge me. Everyone knew this position didn't come easily. I had gone through my training and proved myself for this post. Taylor stepped forward, and I gave him a curt nod. Let's see what you got, you. Owen muttered tauntingly. I got this, Raven. Taylor's voice came through the link just when I paused. Well, break his nose before I do it, I said. Regardless of the outcome of the sparring, he was going to get punished for his attitude. I walked through the ranks, making small changes to posture and giving some input and advice as I went. I had just reached the front when Owen's irritating voice reached me. Come on, faggot, show me what you got. That was my snapping point. I spun around, breaking into a run, my eyes blazing as I raised my fist, punching him across the face, not caring when he hit the ground, rolling over several times before he came to a stop. Everyone was staring at me. Blood was dripping from my fist and my eyes blazing. My chest was thumping wildly, and my anger was raging around me as I stormed towards the man who was coughing up blood. I will not tolerate homophobic. I growled, raising my fist, ready to punch him once more when Taylor walked over. Hey, it's fine, he said. It's nothing new for him. It isn't fine, I hissed, shoving Owen back to the ground. It is, he just has issues, Taylor said through the link. It may not have bothered him, but it sure bothered me. Taylor was one of the nicest guys I knew growing up, and I cannot believe him being gay was the issue here. I want 50 laps around the pack grounds, and if I see you flunking, I swear I will take this to the alpha, I said coldly, turning away just when he spoke. Wow, it seems like someone can't control their temper tantrums, he muttered. Oh boy, you asked for it now. Spinning around, I was about to punch him when someone grabbed my arm, yanking me back. The rush of sparks that coursed through me told me who it was before their scent even registered. He pulled me back, punching Owen across the face and knocking him out cold. Whoa, Taylor muttered. The group fell silent and, oh, I was so mad. I will not tolerate disrespect, Liam growled, glaring at the mass of warriors. I was handling that, I said quietly, doing my best because I swear by Selene and the power of her moon that I was this close to snapping. He looked at me sharply, as if he was not expecting me to say that. What did he want? Me to thank him and gush over his heroic move? No, I don't think so. If you are done, Alpha. Can I carry on? Chapter 6. Liam. I returned to my office, trying not to let her anger get to me. I don't know what I was expecting. Seeing her again, those gorgeous eyes of hers. Was this mate bond only affecting me? Damon seemed to be doing fine too. Was it just me suffering like this? Jealousy reared its ugly head at that thought. Don't let get to you, Liam. I sat back. With the killing that happened last night, the pack was a little restless and everyone had heard about it. Although I made sure everything carried on as usual as best as possible. The tension was clear in the air. The uneasiness of what happened the night before still lingered on everyone's mind. It wasn't something we were just going to forget overnight. The darkness that had settled over the pack was palpable and I could sense the unease and fear clawing its way through the pack link. I really wanted Dad and Mom to go away for a week or so. Dad needed it, and with all of this crap, I think now was the time for him to just relax. Even if he didn't let on, he was going through a lot and I wanted him to know he could count on me. They needed a break. I would offer to babysit Azura, but I wasn't sure I'd manage that considering it would be an entire week or two. On top of that, with the murder, I needed to get to the bottom of it. We had no leads at all. Last night I had tried to track and trace any scent that lingered but there was nothing. I frowned and was trying to figure out what I needed to do next when there was a knock on the door. My eyes flashed, and my mood just got darker when a familiar scent hit my nose. "Enter," I said coldly. The door opened to reveal none other than Damon. Now, why did I need to see him? "Hey!" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you want?" "I thought I'd just come to see if there's anything I could do." "What happened last night? It's shocking and I know if you have nothing useful to say, leave." "I have things to do," I said coldly. "Liam, can we just talk about this?" "Didn't I just say take a hike?" I said, my eyes flashing. He only frowned deeply. Well, if he wanted to be stubborn, I didn't have time for his. Flipping open my laptop, I decided to ignore him instead, but he didn't take the hint. "Liam, I am your beta. We need to work together and at least try to get on. We can't carry on like this," Damon said quietly. "Yeah, well, shame that it is what it is. Unless, of course, you want to step down from your position," I said, knowing I was being a jerk. I didn't really care though, thanks to him, I couldn't even call Raven mine. I am not going to step down, especially when there is stuff going on. We need to just stop ignoring each other, man," he said exasperatedly. "There's a difference between ignoring and just not wanting to see your face." I shot back, standing up. He was getting annoyed, but he was staying calm. I wondered what it'd take for him to get out of my face. "It's been 3 years, Liam. Can't we set our differences aside and are you for real, Nicholson?" "Differences? She may just have been a passing thing for you, since we all know you jump from one infatuation to the next, but for me she was the one I wanted from day one, so don't think 3 or 10 years will change that," I growled, walking up to him and looking him in the eye. "Understood. Understood," he said, clenching his jaw. "One question though, why aren't you going and getting her? This is about her, right? Then why not go after her? Why don't you reject her?" I shot back. "I wanted us to work something out. You ran away from her, Liam, you hurt her." I smirked coldly. "I know I did, but I didn't trust myself or my mental state back then. There was a lot worse I could have done. Walking away before I said or did something I regretted was the smartest choice. The only disappointing thing is that now I'm back, I'm stuck having to see your face," I said coldly, my eyes burning with anger. He clenched his fists, and I knew I had pushed him enough. "What's wrong? Finding it hard to control your temper? Liam, this isn't a joke. I get it. I get that you loved her since day one. But the moon goddess made this decision. Don't you think either of us rejecting her would hurt her?" He snapped, shoving me back a little. "I don't think hurting her is something you really care about, right? I mean, you had no issue. Stop it, man. I'm stating facts. You wanted me to talk to you, I'm talking," I said coldly, shoving him back. His eyes flashed and I don't even know who jumped forward first. I aimed a punch at his jaw only for him to block and throw in his own, I slammed it away and was about to grab his collar when her delicious fresh floral scent hit my nose. I felt her small hand on my chest, pushing me away from him as she forced herself between us. "What are you two doing?" she growled, flinching when I refused to let go of Damon, crushing her between us. I slammed him against the desk, my hand tightening on his neck with Raven still caught between us. Suddenly, I was aware of her stomach against those sparks. All three of our hearts were racing. The storm of emotions that surrounded us, anger, rage, irritation, confusion, and so much more, spread like a toxic poison. I was the first to pull away, tugging Raven away from Damon. I didn't want him anywhere near her. Only for her to yank away from me, her eyes filled with rage as she glared at both of us. "You both need to get your st together. Neither of you is man enough to do anything but whine? Seriously? We lost someone yesterday and today you two are acting like high school-aged pigs," she snapped. "I came here trying to sort this out," Damon said, frowning. He didn't look at me and I knew I had really annoyed him off. "Good. Well then, sort this out. Liam, for your dad, show you can be a responsible alpha. If you two are still hung up over the mating ball, well then get over it and move on. It's been 3 years, what happened back then is in the past. I'm enjoying my life. You should enjoy yours. Reject me, or if you want, I can do it too," the very thought made my stomach churn. "Don't say that." She shook her head, looking between us. I thought I saw a glimmer of sadness there, but I wasn't sure. She was about to leave the room when she paused at the door, turning and looking at me. "As for Owen, I can handle him myself. I don't need a man to fight my battles. Let alone either of you two," she said coldly. I didn't have any right over her words, but I sure as did. Her parting left a heavy silence in the room. I glared at Damon. "Get out," I said to him coldly. He shook his head in defeat, stopping at the door and glancing back at me. "Well, if you ever decide to get your head out, you know where I am," he said, slamming the door shut behind him. I frowned, despite him disrespecting me. We went way back. He had been my best friend, like a brother to me, until that night. Why did it have to happen? I dropped onto my seat, placing my feet on my desk and running a hand through my hair. He had lost his father in that final battle, he had been through a lot, but I had shut everyone out. Now that I was back, I knew deep down I did need to tolerate him. But that meant I needed to do something about us, about Raven. Chapter 7 Liam. It was evening. Mom had mind-linked me to stop by only for me to realize she had tricked me. "Me alone with her?" I asked, looking at the little pumpkin. "She's a good girl, Liam," Mom said dismissively. Dad smirked. "Yup, a real angel," he added, not sounding very convincing. "We could do this tomorrow." "No baby, we are going," Mom said firmly. They were going to visit some lone wolves who lived near our pack territory. Considering the murder, Mom and Dad decided to check in on them, and here I was stuck with my little sister Azura, Auntie Indy's girl that Mom carried. I be good." She blinked those large blue eyes as she assured me. No, that was an alarm bell right there. No kid who says they will be good, and I had seen the devil, Dante. Kids were scary. Don't mess with them. So, since you're visiting a few elderly wolves, you should be home by 11. I asked. Mom smirked. Yes, hopefully. Relax Liam, but I do think we will be back before 11. It's only 6 p.m. now, she said, glancing at the clock on the wall. Anything I need to know? No, just keep her away from the sugary stuff. There's pizza in the oven. It should be done in 20 minutes. Eat, get her ready for bed, tell her a story, then she should knock off. Mom said, grabbing her jacket before meeting Azura with a hug and kisses. The fact that it had been just me and my twin, Kiara, growing up, we didn't have younger siblings, so seeing Mom like this was strange. Not to mention, I wasn't here for Azura's entire 3 years of life. Was she really going to sleep? Didn't look like it. Oh yeah, Liam, Raven was saying she wanted to move to the pack house, get something sorted for her. I was going to tell you earlier, but then with everything that happened last night, I wasn't in the right headspace. Mom said, just when she was about to step outside. Sure. I said, emotionlessly. Raven at the pack house? That's where I was staying. I couldn't deal with this, not when just looking at her made me want to go over to her and claim her as mine. Once the door shut after Mom and Dad, I looked at the little girl who now had her fingers shoved up her nose. Don't do that. It's gross. I said, crouching down in front of her. Do what? She said, taking her finger out of her nose end. She ate it. Azura, pumpkin, you don't eat that. Eat what? She asked. Did she not realize what she had just did? Okay, let's wash your hands. She frowned as I tugged her to the kitchen. Goddess, kids were gross. I washed my hands after I went to the toilet, William. Yeah, but you were picking your bogies. I said, lifting her onto the worktop. Oh, they're tasty. She giggled. I cringed. Were we this disgusting as kids? All right, how about we get the pizza and watch a movie while you eat? I suggested. Hopefully, she'll fall asleep in the process. I took a tray out, grabbing what we needed before taking the pizza out. William, can I have Coca-Cola? She asked, as I took a can from the fridge for myself. I'm sure Mom said no sugar. Aren't you too little? No, I'm allowed half a can. She said, looking up at me with those large eyes of hers. That's true. We were werewolves. I guess pups were more tolerant to caffeine how adults would be to alcohol and stuff. Ah. Okay. I shrugged, grabbing another one and placing it on the tray before carrying it to the living room. Placing the food down, I put a slice on her plate and asked what she wanted to watch on TV. I watch that. She pointed at a show and I put it on for her. Sitting back, we began eating and my mind wandered to Raven and what she had said earlier. It was hard seeing her, yet all I wanted was to see her all the time. The urge to just pull her into my arms and tell her to accept me and me alone was so strong. But I didn't really deserve that, not after how I shut her out for the last 3 years. What are the autopsy results? Anything yet? I asked Zach through the link. Poison, but the traces are so light we barely picked them up. William, Coke. I opened the can, putting a straw into it for her as I held it out to her distractedly. What did it include? They still working on that, but there were traces of silver and wolfsbane mixed in too. Get pictures of the mutilation, exact time of death, and whatever else you can before returning the body to the family, so soon. Zach sounded surprised. His parents wanted him back. If we can't get any more information from him, then it's best we accept their wishes. There were a few cents around him, I'll question those wolves tomorrow. Okay, Alpha. I closed the link to see Azura sucking on the straw like there was no tomorrow. How much did she have? I pulled the can out of her iron grip to see it was practically empty. "Well, that was tasty," she said in awe, shivering from the fizziness, before she gave me a big smile. "I love Coke." A sliver of doubt entered my mind, and I wondered, was she really allowed it? I got the answer to that 10 minutes later. "I want to go out. Let's go for a walk, William." She was hyper and acting like a rabid dog right now. "William." She pulled at my sleeve before biting it and pulling my arm. "Out." "Mom said bed, Azura," I said, about to pick her up when she tensed and I could hear her pounding heart. She was going to cry. "Okay, fine, let's go for a walk." Seriously, I hope this wore her out. I guess I couldn't really complain. What gives a kid Coke just because they said they are allowed it? Me. That's who. 2 hours later, Azura still had not settled down. She was beyond upset, crying and asking for Mom. I did text Mom, who said they had a little way to go, but thanks to an accident they were in the midst of a traffic jam, and they couldn't really abandon the car. At first, Azura had been happy and running around, but then she started getting upset, and now she was out of control. "I want Mama." She was now screaming in my arms. Kids were loud. "Look, Azura, how about we go back home?" "Mama." My ears were going to burst. She was trying to escape my hold, hitting my shoulder as she cried. If Mom saw the state she was in, she was going to castrate me. "Need help?" Raven's s.exe voice came from behind me. My heart skipped a beat as I turned towards her. As much as I wanted to refuse her help, I couldn't handle the pup in my arms. I didn't reply, watching her. Her eyes weren't on me but on Azura, giving her a gentle smile, although she was crying too much to even pay attention. With Raven, she always had that smile on her face. You wouldn't think she had snapped at me in my office earlier by the look of her now, but it was one of the things I loved about her most growing up. She had been a lot smaller than Kiera, but she always held her hand, taking care of her, making sure she never stumbled or hurt herself. Raven had always been tiny, but the size of her heart was huge. She always held such a positive and loving energy around herself that even when I sensed her sadness, it would be accompanied by the biggest smile. She began walking over to us and I looked her over appreciatively. She looked good in an oversized off-shoulder knitted jumper dress, that draped off one shoulder, and she wore thigh-high boots underneath. I couldn't speak, trying not to look at her thighs that were drawing my attention. Eyes up here, Westwood. Chapter 8. Raven. Staying in was suffocating, so I did what I did best, I jumped out of the window and left. I was enjoying the fresh air. It was slightly chilly, but nothing that would affect us werewolves. I wrapped my arms around myself while walking along, glad I wore my suede thigh-high boots. I was just walking around the edge of the trees when I heard someone crying hysterically. A child at that. Concerned, I followed the sound only to find Liam wrestling a very upset Azura. Her face was a dark pink and she looked distraught. "Need help?" I asked without thinking. He stiffened before turning to me sharply. Goddess, he was so annoyingly handsome. Even while wrestling an angry, red-faced, little cute chibi. My stomach fluttered nervously, feeling undressed under his intense, sharp gaze that still threw me off. It was like he was a stranger I didn't recognize. His eyes were burning into me. I saw them darken when they fell on my bare thighs. This stupid oversized top was ridiculously short, but I wasn't expecting to run into him. I resisted the urge to tug it down and instead remained smooth. "Eyes up here, Westwood," I remarked. I walked over, Reaching up I took Azura from his arms. I hated this, the way my heart pounded when he was near. Oh, how I wished I could turn back time to when I had him as a friend without this bond. My heart clenched painfully and I instead focused on Azura, who began to fight me, screaming. I want Mama. Mom and Dad have gone out and won't be back for a while. Liam added, only making her cry louder. Ah, Zuzu. Look, Mama will come back soon. I said, wrapping my arms around her tightly, only for her to scream harder. I ignored the broody big boy behind me, turning and carrying her towards the playground. Mama! She screamed. What did you do? I asked Liam, not even bothering to turn, knowing his eyes were fixed on me. Nothing. She had some fizzy drink and then she wanted to come out, so I brought her. Then she just got upset. He said in a broody tone. It was probably the caffeine. I doubt it. I said, sitting down on the swing. I placed her on my lap, wrapping my arms around her, her head on my shoulders as I began rocking her gently. She was probably overtired. I'm sure it must have been her bedtime. Yet. The hinges of the swing next to me creaked when Liam sat down gingerly. I had never seen him sit on it before. When we were younger, he used to say he was alpha and was too big for it. As I got older, I realized he used to just do it to let me and Kia take all the turns. Whilst Damon would push us. Memories that pained me. I stroked Azura's back, rocking her gently, her crying decreasing despite the fact that she was still sniffling. The last time I had come here was that fateful night. His beating heart, his scent, and his long legs were unami-cable even when I tried to ignore him. Shall I take her? He spoke after a moment. Let her settle down. I said, kissing the top of her head. She's falling asleep. He murmured. I looked up at him, our eyes meeting, and that same crushing feeling tightened inside. The distant whimper of my wolf rang in my head. This bond between us. I knew I needed to end it, but rejection would hurt both parties. If we were to do it, we needed to do it discreetly and then make sure we had time to recover. There had been one promise I made to myself, that when I came home, I would reject them both. But with the scary murder and all the other stuff that had been going on, the timing just didn't feel right. I sighed heavily, hearing Azura's heartbeat become steady. You actually got her to sleep. All she needed was a little comfort. I said, standing up, holding the child close to me. Guess so. He reached over, trying to untangle her from me, when she sobbed in her sleep and tightened her hold on me. I'll put her in her bed. He didn't argue. I had a feeling he was glad to have her off his hands. With what happened last night, you shouldn't be out alone. I'm strong enough to handle myself. I replied. I did not need any of that. I was not a baby. Yet, but with the killer still out there. I'm a big girl, Liam. I cut in. Yet? From what angle? My eyes flashed and I turned, glaring up at the giant. Just because we are not all overgrown turnips doesn't mean we aren't strong enough to take care of ourselves. I said, shaking my head with irritation. He cocked his brow but said nothing as we reached the large house in the woods. The lights were glowing welcomingly as we approached. He unlocked the door and I stepped inside, not even realizing how cold it had been out there. I led the way up the stairs. I had no idea which one her room was. Seeming to understand my hesitation, Liam brushed past me, making my stomach flutter and opening the door opposite Auntie Red's room. I entered and I had to admit her room was so cute, decorated in a unicorn theme with pinks, rose gold and white. The wallpaper had clouds on it, set against a glittering pink background. The bedding and curtains were covered in unicorns, and the pink fairy lights that made the room glow made me want to just jump onto the bed and sleep in this cutesy room. I carried her to the low bed. It was small, yet big enough for my 5-foot frame if I had wanted to fit. See, I could totally sleep here. Liam moved the covers back and I slowly lowered her to the bed. She began crying and I winced. Oh crap! SHH, I got you. I whispered, slowly lowering myself onto the bed and patting her back. Liam muttered, "Kids are so hard." He reached over, taking Azura's shoes off. Her leg was draped over my waist. His arm brushed my thigh, sending a shock of sparks through me, and I couldn't stop the gasp that escaped me. His eyes snapped to mine, changing to a dark magnetic blue. My heart was thundering but I looked away quickly, trying to detangle Azura from my neck. "I'll get her," Liam said, slowly taking her hands from around my neck. Only for her eyes to flutter open and the start of a new wave of tears threatened to spill. "It's okay, I'll hold her," I said, not looking at him. "It's near 10 anyway, Anta should be back soon." "You sure?" "Yeah," I said, not missing how his gaze fell on my bare legs. "Goddess, please tell me my A*S is not peeking out cheekily." He looked away smoothly, and I was glad because otherwise I was going to give him an earful. I reached down and unzipped my boot, pulling it off before reaching for the other. I was about to remove it, trying not to disturb Azura when Liam reached over, unzipping it and tugging it off for me, making my heart thump louder. His piercing eyes met mine as he dropped the boot on the floor and leaned closer. I clung to Azura tightly, despite trying my best to remain indifferent. However, I was not able to stop the fear from consuming me when I realized that I was still vulnerable to the bond. His closeness, his scent, and those dangerously eyes were a thirst trap I couldn't deny. I turned my head away, closing my eyes. "I can't see you. Go away." I thought I heard a small chuckle but I wasn't sure when I felt the blanket cover us both, and then I felt him move away. I was not able to breathe until he left. "I'll be downstairs," he said quietly before he shut the door after him. My eyes flew open and I let out the breath I didn't know I was holding. I had always wished Liam was my mate, but the older I got, I had that connection with both Liam and Damon. Like there was just that chemistry there. I know someone would say choose one and reject the other, but it hurts to think of doing that to either of them. Just the thought made my wolf whimper and my chest tighten. It wasn't even my own fear, it was the fact that I would have to hurt one of them, and because of me, I might destroy their friendship completely. I didn't want to be that woman, not now, not ever. That was why I never approached them, not wanting to be the reason for their bond to break. Deep down, in the beginning, I hoped they'd accept it and we could be happy no matter how unique our situation was. Yet as time passed, I stopped thinking about that and made it clear to my wolf and to myself that I didn't need a mate. I eased out of Azura's hold, quickly replacing a large plus here in my spot. She hugged it loosely, but she was in a deep sleep and I was sure she would stay that way now. Yay! I picked up my boots slowly and padded to the door, exiting silently. I shut the door as quietly as possible behind me, stepping back when I suddenly knocked into someone. I gasped as a hand clamped over my mouth. Before I could even register the shock of sparks that coursed through me, I had flipped him over my shoulder, slamming him to the ground, one hand going to his neck as I pinned him down with a knee to his chest. For the first time since my return, a small smirk of amusement crossed his L.P.S. "Nice move. Liam said, making my heart race at that old nickname, his eyes roaming down my body until they lingered on my bare legs. But it was his next words that made my eyes fly open. "And an even nicer view," he whispered seductively, the back of his fingers ghosting down my left thigh. Chapter 9 Raven. The moment those sparks rushed through me, my eyes blazed as I looked at the man beneath me. "And this is an even nicer punch," I growled quietly, before punching him square in the nose. The sickening crunch as I broke it satisfied me. How dare he! I jumped off of him, resisting the urge to kick him in the balls, and instead kicked his knee, hard. How dare he! Grabbing my boots, I turned and stormed down the stairs. My heart was thundering with 100 emotions, but above all, I felt angry. How could he ignore me for 3 years and think he could just start flirting with me? Nope, not happening. I am not a pushover. I will not. Raven. He grabbed my arm just as I reached the front door, and I was annoyed to see he had put his nose back in place. "Don't touch me, Liam," I hissed, yanking free. "I'm sorry," he said, raising his hands in surrender. That was out of line. He looked away and I shook my head. He didn't get it. What was out of line was being out of my life for 3 years and then pretending it never happened, that he never left or hurt me. "A good night, Liam." "It's not safe," I said. "Good night," I said coldly, glaring at him. Daring him to argue with me, he frowned, clenching his jaw. "Night," he replied coldly, and his walls were up once more. I turned away, walking out of the house, not bothering to put my shoes on. I knew he couldn't follow me with Azura sleeping upstairs, and I was glad. I made my way back towards my parents' house, not bothered with the wet floor or the dirt that was sticking to my feet. The rain was still falling lightly and the sound of distant animals could be heard. That night, 2 years ago, I went with Cassandra and Auntie Angela to a neighboring town. They had been on pack business with the pack that was hosting the mating ball. Auntie had asked me if I wanted to attend, but I told her no. As per the rules, 1 ball per year was hosted by King Al and the other by a different pack. The memory of me finding my own mates had been too painful. I had left my hotel room and gone to get some drinks. Then, to my surprise, Liam had shown up. I was beyond shocked. I had never expected to see him like that. He had been so drunk, for someone who didn't want me and had left me on the mating ball. He had stolen my first kiss that night. Although my entire body had wanted to give in to him, I couldn't, not when he was in that state and not when I was tied to not 1 but 2 mates. I couldn't do that to Damon. I had wanted to help Liam that night, but he had just pushed me away. It made me wonder how many women these two had been with my so-called mates. I smiled gently. Life truly sucked at times. I reached home and decided to climb through my bedroom rather than face my parents. Once inside, I pulled my dress off and wiped my feet on it before shutting and locking the window. I walked over to my wardrobe, taking down one of the suitcases that I hadn't unpacked, knowing I was going to leave this place anyway. Opening it up, I rummaged around until one pulled out Liam's suit jacket from that night. I caressed the fabric, my heart clenching at the way he told me to leave him alone. I sighed heavily, shoving it back into my suitcase and replacing it on top of my wardrobe before deciding to take a shower. I had just showered, before I returned to my room toweling my hair. I shut the door behind me when a sudden scent hit my nose and I froze, yanking the towel from my hair. My eyes snapped to the bed where none other than Damon was sitting. Flicking through one of my books, he now looked up, giving me a small smile. "Hey!" My heart thundered and I glanced at the shut door behind me. Why was this happening today? I didn't want to see my mates, yet I ended up seeing both of them. His eyes trailed over me and I realized my trousers hung low, showing off the band of my knickers. His eyes flashed for a moment before he looked away smoothly. I hated how these two pigs were looking at me like I was a piece of meat, yet neither had the audacity to even care about how I had felt years ago, the way they left me feeling broken and unwanted. Now that I had pulled myself together and became strong, they decide to come back into my life. No, I don't think so. Hey, so can I ask why you are in my room? I asked, raising an eyebrow, trying to ignore how hot he looked. I had broken one pretty nose tonight, I wouldn't mind adding another to that list. I thought we could talk without anyone interrupting us. He said quietly, reaching behind him, holding up 2 packets of fizz sweets and a bag of donuts. I brought a bribe? My heart skipped a beat, but I tried not to let it get to me. Walking over to my wardrobe, I took out a black vest and pulled it on. Who let you in? I asked, deciding to keep myself busy, so began to clean my room up a little. Your mom. I was going to come through the window but it was locked. Your dad left too, so I decided to just come through the front door. He said, laying back on the bed. Thank goddess, Dad wasn't around. I didn't need more drama. Raven, can we talk? You want to talk now? Go ahead, I'm all ears. I said, picking up my wet dress that I had left near the window. First of all, I want to apologize for everything. Nothing I say is going to justify that night, but you have got to remember Liam is my alpha, I see him as my brother. I needed him to be okay with this, with us. I get that, Damon, but it doesn't excuse that you both were so caught up in how you both felt that you didn't even once consider how I was probably feeling. I never wanted 2 mates, but I was given them. Yet you both cut me off without a second thought. I said, my voice was emotionless and I made sure to hide every emotion that I was feeling. Emotions that were eating up at me every time I thought of them. I glanced up at him, feeling his intense gaze on me. I hated seeing the guilt in his soft blue eyes. I know. I just didn't know how to react. He muttered. Tell me, Damon, why now then? Why are you talking about it now? I tried to talk to Liam again. That didn't go well, you saw that. I wanted to know what you wanted. I almost laughed. What I want? Did what I want even count? Care to explain? I asked. He stood up after taking a donut out of the packet, walked over to me and held it out. I took it, not wanting to be a diva, but it did not mean he was forgiven. We both want you, but clearly Liam doesn't want to share. What's your thoughts on this? As 3 years too late, Damon? 3 years too late. I don't want either of you anymore. I said quietly. Don't say that, Liam's stubbornness. Tell me something, Damon, who is Robin to you? I asked suddenly. He seemed to have been struck, his face drained of color and he looked shocked. It was clear he wasn't expecting that, and I felt the stabbing pain in my chest as if something was squeezing my heart painfully. He looked away and I saw the guilt in his eyes. I got my answer, and as much as I wanted to say it didn't hurt, it did. She's. The urge to smile and tell him he didn't need to explain almost overtook me, but no, I needed to know and I didn't need to make things easier for either, they were big boys. He ran a hand through his gorgeous curls and exhaled. My chest constricting painfully, I knew whatever it was and I was not going to like it. I didn't think you'd come back like this. Oh, you don't need to justify anything, Damon, just answer the question. I said, biting into the donut, trying my best to act normal, trying to prepare myself for his words as I tossed a few items of clothing into the washing hamper. We have been kind of dating for the last year or so. My heart thudded, the whimper of my wolf in the back of my mind stung as sudden pain and betrayal overwhelmed me. "I'm sorry, Raven. I don't know how it happened, we just had a connection, don't Raven. He was never yours, he was never yours. I am sorry." His whispered apology came, but I couldn't comprehend anything anymore. This pain. I thought I could handle it, but it hurt so much. Chapter 10. Damon. I said it, the reason behind the guilt that had been consuming me since she returned. I needed to tell her anyway. Her porcelain doll-like face stayed in its perfect mask, yet I could feel her pain, hear her racing heart and see the way her fingers trembled ever so slightly on that donut. Her eyes, which were so unique and perfect, looked at me, but there was no hatred there. Damn it, I hurt her. "I'm sorry, Raven. Raven," I whispered, closing the gap between us, but she suddenly snapped out of it, despite her erratic heartbeat. "Thanks for telling me. Do you have anything else to say?" she asked with a blank face. I frowned, slightly concerned. I didn't know what to say. I stepped closer, pulling her tightly into my arms. I didn't care if the donut went everywhere, I just needed to tell her I'm sorry. Her fresh floral scent and the beating of her heart soothed me. That emptiness I felt inside seemed to lift, and I inhaled her scent for a split second before she pulled away roughly. "Don't touch me without my permission," she growled. "Now get out." I felt like but it was a little late for that. If anything, I needed to fix things with her, with Liam. "Sure, I'll leave, but I am sorry, Raven," I said softly, reaching for her face only for her to move away from my touch. "Out," she said icily. I looked into her gorgeous face. She was perfect. I turned away, wishing things could have been different. There was one more visit I needed to make tonight, and I wanted to get it over with. I left her room, shutting the door behind me, walking down the stairs to see Raven's dad just step inside. "Oh hey, Mr. Jacobs," I said, giving the man a smile. He gave me a small smile. "Damon, it's nice to see you here, catching up." "Yeah," I replied, with a small smile. He nodded in approval. "What's that?" he asked, looking at the jam on my t-shirt. I smirked, "Raven being Raven," I said. He shook his head, chuckling. "She never changes. It's what's great about her," I said, giving her mom a small wave. I glanced back up the stairs, but she hadn't followed. Well, can I blame her? I had hurt her. I left the Jacobs home and headed towards the pack house where Robin lived. I did need to tell her about Raven, and I knew even this was going to hurt. I entered, it was pretty silent. I could hear a few of the teens in the game room, and I first went to the laundry room to grab a random clean shirt. I don't really care who it belongs to. I then made my way upstairs to her room, knocking lightly on the door. "Who is it?" "The big bad wolf," I replied. Her soft laughter followed before the door was pulled open and she pulled me inside. Sing my L.P.S. softly. But instead of pulling her into my arms and sing her back, I moved back, casting her a small smirk. I shut the door, not missing how she was observing me. She was gorgeous, with warm brown skin, dark brown eyes and her black hair, which was currently open. She was so different from Raven, yet still beautiful. She wore a crop top and tiny shorts that left her thick GHS and SEXY booty on display. "Okay, I know that face. What's up?" she asked, concerned, before she tugged me to the bed. I looked at her calculatingly. How do I do this? I needed to end. For a moment I remembered how I felt when Kiera ended it with me. Although we had just been sex partners, it had hurt. I ran my hand through my hair as she sat next to me, crossing her legs and placing a hand on my arm, concern clear in her face. Damon, you're scaring me, babe. I stared ahead, my hands crossed in front of my mouth. You know Raven. I began glancing at her. She frowned, a pout on her plump, lush L.P.S. Yeah. Well, it's just that. We need to end this. I muttered. She looked confused for a moment, before her heart thudded in her ch3st and I knew she understood what I had just said. I stared into those chocolate eyes of hers, seeing the hurt in them. I never knew you and Raven were ever, something. I know you talked about her, but I thought you were just friends, she whispered, now staring at her hands, examining her painted nails. I reached over and took her hand. She's my mate, I said quietly. Robin's eyes closed and I heard her suck her breath in. S.H.T. Thanks to my selfish reasons, I had hurt 2 women. She slowly pulled out of my hold, moving away from me on the bed. Her ch3st was rising and falling heavily, but despite that, she was trying to hold herself together. S.H.T. Damon. She's your mate. How long have you 2 known? 3 years. I said quietly. Her eyes flashed and a frown creased her forehead. So then why did you even get involved with me? She asked, unable to hide the hurt in her voice. One, I don't know. I just... You made me feel better. I said, feeling like S.H.T. She nodded, placing her forehead in her hand. That day she returned. No wonder you pulled away. I thought for a moment it was strange. Then I thought maybe you 2 had dated, but then I thought no. I thought you had shared stuff with me. But I never thought she was your mate. What must she have been thinking? She snapped now, jumping off the bed. She grabbed a pillow and whacked me across the head. You are such a... Okay, maybe I deserved that. I'm sorry, Robin. I said softly. You should be apologizing to your mate, not me. She shook her head. Get out, Damon, we are done. Yeah, that's why I came out. She snapped and I got up. I was literally losing someone else important to me. I didn't say anything. Casting one last glance at her, she had her back to me, but her heart was racing erratically. I left, closing the door behind me, but I didn't move, leaning against the wall and closing my eyes. Silence. For a few minutes, there was nothing, until I heard the stifled sobs coming from inside the room. I closed my eyes. She had waited for me to leave. Damn it. Tonight I had hurt 2 women I cared for. I really need to talk to Liam, like for real. We needed to sort our SHT out, one way or another. I headed home, unlocking the front door. I stepped inside. The television was on, which meant Mom was still downstairs. I walked through to the living room, sighing inwardly when I saw the empty beer bottles that were strewn across the floor. As for my mom, she was sitting on the couch, her arms wrapped around her legs. Another bad day. I should have come home sooner. Hey, Mama! I said brightly, picking up a few bottles when I entered the room. She looked up, her heart thundering as she looked around, as if searching for something. A shaky, hopeful smile crossed her face before it vanished. Damon, where's your dad? She asked. I placed the bottles down and dropped onto the couch next to her. The smell of alcohol was strong in the air and Mom was a mess. "Mama! Dad ain't he must have gone to Elijah. He called him, right? Is he coming home soon? You know, as Beta, he has a lot going on," she said to me, her voice shaky, her eyes blurring with tears. It hurt. Nearly 3.5 years had passed since Dad was killed, but Mom had never overcome it. She lived in the past, and with each passing year, I was losing her a little more. Sometimes she was numb, sometimes she thought he would return, sometimes she completely refused to believe he was gone, sometimes she'd just relapse into breaking down and sobbing over his loss all over again. "He'd want you to go to bed on time and get your rest," I said quietly, smiling at her. She shook her head. "No. No, Aaron prefers me waiting for him." "Why are you lying?" "Okay, I'm sorry. Come on, how about you wait upstairs for Dad? I can get this place cleaned." "Wait, is that him?" She suddenly perked up, staring into the corner, unseeing. The loss of a mate. Some people recovered but many weren't able to survive it. As for Mom, she was a shell of the person I once knew. Losing Dad that night, having to take up that position as Beta, being here for Mom, trying to hold it all together, it wasn't easy. I know I'm not doing a good job at it. Then everything with Liam and Raven, losing the last of my closest friends in one go had been another hit, and the fear of losing either forever had messed me up. The fear that if I went after my mate and Liam did something in anger scared me. I kept away from her. I didn't make the right choices, I know that, but what was I meant to do? Uncle L had lost his dad, sister, and best friend, then Liam wanted to leave and he hadn't wanted anyone to know about our situation. I couldn't stress his parents out anymore by telling them the truth, so I stayed silent, hoping things would get better. But every message I sent, he refused to acknowledge. Every email, every social media DM, he blocked me from everywhere. That's when Robin had entered my life and we began to connect. Soon she became that happy place for me. Even if it didn't complete me, it took the edge off the gaping hole in my ch3st. Mom began sobbing, bringing me out of my thoughts as I pulled her into my arms, rocking her gently. "Your dad's not talking to me, he's not replying, he blocked me from the link," she sobbed, clinging to me. "I know. It's going to be okay," I whispered, stroking her hair. "When would things become easier? Or if you want to pay for more such audiobooks, you can send us a request in a private Facebook group, or join us on WhatsApp, a link is given in the video description. The audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.